next church that Jesus addresses is Philadelphia. This city was known for a variety of things, but one of those things is that they had worship centers and temples that were very grand, something they were known for. Architecture, well-engineered, well-designed buildings were something very prevalent in this city. These people were known for their architectural ability, right? I'm speaking about the city, not necessarily the church, although the church would be exposed to this and see these kinds of things on a daily basis. I think that's something interesting that Jesus will use as an illustration, especially as he gets into here, similar to the way he used the garments with Sardis. He's going to use that to speak to Philadelphia. So let's go ahead and read the address to Philadelphia in chapter 3.
Okay, from Revelation chapter 3, beginning in verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, He who is holy, who is true, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one will open, says this, I know your deeds. Behold, I have put before you an open door, which no one can shut, because you have little power, and have kept my word, and have not denied my name. Behold, I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan, who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. I will make them come and bow down at your feet, and make them know that I have loved you. Because you have kept the word of my perseverance. I also will keep you from the hour of testing, the hour which is about to come upon the whole world, to test those who dwell on the earth. I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, so that no one will take your crown. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he will not go out from it any more. And I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
Awesome. So let's talk about the good things that Jesus has to say to this group of people. He says in verse 8, I know your deeds. I have placed before you an open door no one can shut. You have kept my word. You have not denied my name. This is another group of people who were standing strong against the opposing forces around them and the opposing views, the opposing thoughts. They're praised for the strength in their faith. Jesus mentions that they have little power, likely speaking about their political power or their status in the city, that Rome is in power and that the Christians would likely have very little influence over anything. This city is full of temples and synagogues being used for sinful things. They are in the minority in their city with no power over the enemies to put an end to these things around them, yet they're standing strong. This contrast we see here. No power, yet they are strong to stand against it. And obviously that's what Jesus says is important for them.
Yeah, I think, as we studied with Smyrna, there's no condemnation here against the church. They had little strength. Now, like you said, there's a lot of interpretation of what that means. Is it power against the organization, or was it material in nature, right, as well? Because they were probably isolated because of being, Christians, but they had kept the Lord and they haven't denied His name. And as we look at this church too, Cody, a little bit, you mentioned some things about the background of the city, but one of the things that Philadelphia was, and I think it ties into some of the Lord's statements about His providence, about being able to open and shut the door, was this was really a missionary city for the Greeks and the Romans to spread their languages and their culture out over the years to the east. And it was strategically located, and so you see, and I think it talks a little bit about the providence of God here, that you have this church in Philadelphia. They have little strength, but a big opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. As we think about this now, big opportunity is not what the world thinks of from a material perspective, but from a spiritual perspective here, and He commends them for that.
Exactly. Yeah, He uses this analogy of a door that's open. I think that maybe that's talking about the opportunity that you mentioned, the opportunity to do good. And I think ultimately this door leads through the path of righteousness and ultimately to their salvation and to their reward, and saying that no one's able to shut it, right? All of these things that you are working towards and working for as a Christian, no one can do anything to. Like nobody, you can stand strong and nobody can take that away from you. It makes me think of Matthew 10, verse 28. Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, right? That this is the soul we're talking about. Nobody can harm it. Nobody can take away your faith or your righteousness or those things from you unless you let them do it.
Right. No, I think that open door metaphor that is used here is so interesting as he commends the church here. They have an open door. As we go and look at the use of that term open door in the scriptures, we go to Colossians and Corinthians and Acts, but it was God that opened the door. Paul asked them in Colossians 4, pray for me that doors will be opened by the Lord, right? When we go back into Acts, when he comes back from his missionary journey, he's back and reporting how that God had opened the door to the Gentiles. So it's interesting that he has set before them an open door. And again, I think the metaphor ties a lot to spreading of the gospel, like you mentioned already. And they had that responsibility, they had that opportunity to do so. God can open it, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody can close it. They may have little power, but who really has the power, right? Yeah. Is the Lord. So I find that interesting.
And I think this is something obviously we can use as a takeaway for us, that it can be so easy to be overwhelmed by the world and the bad things that are happening and maybe our lack of power in our world and our lack of influence, right? But none of these things can affect our work as Christians in a real sense. None of them can take away our reward or can stop us from doing the work of God unless we let it. We can stand strong even though we face some challenging things in our culture, right? We talked about it earlier about people asking us to change our tolerance of things that are around us. We don't have to do that, right? And whatever they have to offer in response, whether that's rebuke or shame or even if it becomes physical at any point, it can't harm us. It cannot close that door that God has opened to us in his offering of salvation and things to us.
Yeah, I like that idea of as humans, right? Sometimes we take it upon ourselves if we're not careful. We have to trust in God. We trust in His providence and trust in His promises. And here he's saying when he says that He's opened the door, right? Not always is it up to us to open the door, but we should be like John told his disciples in John chapter 4, you need to be looking for the opportunities because they're there, right? And so that's part of this, again, admonition, I think, that he talks about, which is a good thing in their case because it seems they were doing this and they wanted to do it, right? And that's how they can affect their change and work in the kingdom.
Interestingly enough, for Philadelphia, you mentioned this earlier, this is another instance similar to Smyrna where Jesus has no rebuke to offer them. Again, not that nothing was wrong with anyone, but as a whole, they were doing the work of Christ. It's interesting that with both Smyrna and Philadelphia, the fact that Jesus says nothing about things that are wrong in the church speaks volumes about their faith. It says so much that these people were faithful. They were strong. They were not the whitewashed tombs that I mentioned earlier, full of dead men's bones. They were faithful, righteous, and they were in right standing with God. And that's what Jesus is affirming for them, their stance. And I think that is intentional to lead us to the counsel he's offering that, don't give up. You are in right standing with God. Stay true to that. I am coming soon, he says. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. That was verse 11. Don't give up. Hold on for a little while longer. You're not done. Don't hit that point of complacency or losing your love that some of these other churches have done. Keep going, keep persevering, and endure through whatever else may come.
Yeah, if there's, as you think about those ideas, Cody, an idea, he's encouraging them to hold fast, to continue on. We'll get there in a minute, right? But this idea, even though the Lord has opened the door, and he does mention again the synagogue of Satan here, right? Interestingly, in both churches that don't have any condemnation, the Jews are present in some form or fashion. So certainly they must have been they're certainly suffering something, we know, from that side and from the Roman side. But even though the door is opened by the Lord, right, it still may require suffering, right? I think it's another jump up from the text here. In Acts 8, when the church was dispersed because of the persecution of then Saul, right? Well, what was that an open door? Or what happened? Right? They went everywhere teaching the gospel. The gospel went to Samaria, and we see the eunuch and those things. So I just find it's interesting. God opens the door, but we got to walk through, and it doesn't mean it's going to be an easy walk. So He's encouraged them to continue on, to hold fast, and have this, even though they may have little strength compared to the world, they do have a big opportunity. And of course, they're fighting with the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, right?
Absolutely. And as we near the end of this account, this address to Philadelphia, we get into this council, and we get into this, again, something similar he's talked about, but maybe a little more lengthy here, how moving forward the situation would improve for them. That not necessarily that things are going to be easy from this point forward, but that there is an hour of trial coming upon the world, which obviously the rest of the book of Revelation will point to and will speak in large about, that we won't really cover here. But these people, God's people, are always told they'll be protected from this in a real sense in regards to their spiritual lives. And that's what God is assuring them, that things are going to change. You will be taken care of in a way that matters. And He says, you're going to become a pillar in the temple of my God. Again, alluding to those things these people would see and be familiar with, right? The strength of a pillar and the necessity of a pillar in regards to building a temple, that they could be that. And it's motivation and it's encouragement, again, to continue on in the way that they've been doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. He talks about coming quickly, hold fast what you have, so that no one will take your crown. Nobody can take it from them, right? If they hold fast. And like we've mentioned before, the victory, Jesus has promised the victory, right? And here again, He's confirming that.
So with that, we'll come to the close of Philadelphia, and we'll move on to our last church, Laodicea.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.